Hello everyone, welcome to the weekly lecture videos once again. In this video, I will be covering third learning objective of this chapter, the bankruptcy cost. If you recall, in the last video, we have discussed that debt has two distinguishing features. One is that interest paid on debt is tax deductible. So this is good for a firm using debt because it brings some benefit, which we call tax benefit or tax shield. The second one, however, is the failure to meet debt obligation can result in bankruptcy. It's a negative side of using debt financing because that can add some cost to debt financing. So in the last video, I have discussed the taxes, effect of taxes on capital structure. So in this video, I'm going to discuss the second factor, which is the bankruptcy or liquidation cost and its association with capital structure. One limit to the amount of debt a firm might use that comes in the form of bankruptcy costs. Okay, note that technically firms do not go bankrupt; they go into liquidation. Bankruptcy is a term that applies to individuals. Okay, as the debt equity ratio rises, so does the probability that the firm will unable to pay its debt holder what was promised to them. When this happens, ownership of the firm's asset is ultimately transferred from shareholders to debt holders. Okay, so in principle, a firm goes into liquidation when value of its asset equals the value of its debt. And when this occurs, the value of equity is zero, and the shareholders turn over control of the firm to the debt holders. At this point, debt holders hold assets whose value is exactly equal to what is owed on the debt. And in a perfect world, there are no costs associated with this transfer of ownership, and the debt holders do not lose anything. Okay. This idealized view of bankruptcy or liquidation process is not, of course, what happens in the real world. Ironically, it is expensive to go into liquidation. Okay. So let's discuss a few points about liquidation and bankruptcy. So first of all is direct liquidation cost. When the value of a firm's assets equals the value of its debt, the firm is economically bankrupt in the sense that the equity has no value. However, the formal turning over of the assets to the debt holders is a legal process involving the appointment of a liquidator, not an economic one. There are legal and administrative costs to liquidation, and it has been remarked that liquidations are to lawyers what blood is to sharks. Okay, because of the expenses associated with bankruptcy liquidation, debt holders will not get all that they owed. Some fraction of the firm's asset will disappear in the legal process of going into liquidation. These are the legal and administrative expenses associated with the liquidation process. We call these costs direct liquidation costs. There are some indirect liquidation costs too. Because it's expensive to go into liquidation, a firm spends resources to avoid doing so. When a firm is having significant problems in meeting its debt obligations, we say that it is experiencing financial distress. Okay, some financially distressed firms ultimately file for liquidation by appointing an administrator, but most do not because they are able to recover or otherwise survive. The cost of avoiding liquidation incurred by a financially distressed firms are called indirect liquidation costs. We use the term financial distress costs to refer generically to the direct and indirect costs associated with going into liquidation or avoiding the appointment of an administrator. The problems that come up in financial distress are particularly severe, and the financial distress costs are larger, okay, when the shareholders and the debt holders are different groups. Until the firm is legally placed into administration that proceeds to liquidation, the shareholders control. Okay, they of course may take action in their own economic interests. Since the shareholders can be wiped out in a liquidation, they have a very strong incentive to avoid liquidation. The debt holders, on the other hand, are primarily concerned with protecting the value of the firm's assets and will try to take control away from the shareholders. They have a strong incentive to seek administration leading to liquidation to protect their interest and keep shareholders from further dissipating the assets of the firm. The net effect of all this is that a long, drawn out, and potentially quite expensive legal battle that is started. Meanwhile, as the wheels of justice turn in their Pandora's way, the assets of the firm may lose value as management may be busy trying to avoid liquidation instead of running the business. Okay. Normal operations are disrupted, sales are lost, valuable employees leave, potentially fruitful programs are dropped to preserve cash, and otherwise profitable investments are not taken. Okay, so these are all indirect liquidation costs or cost of financial distress. Okay, I repeat, normal operations are disrupted, sales are lost, valuable employees leave, fruitful programs are dropped, profitable investments are not taken. So these are all indirect cost or cost of financial distress, whereas direct liquidation costs, as I already indicated, legal and administrative expense. Whether or not the firm ultimately goes into liquidation, the net effect is a loss of value because the firm chooses to use debt in its capital structure. It is this possibility of loss that limits the amount of debt that a firm will choose to use. So that's the end of our discussion on bankruptcy and liquidation costs. And in the next video, we will cover the optimum capital structure theory. Thank you very much.